All right. Well, welcome everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. Our recording and our broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording and our broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. I would now like to take roll call. Jessica Spicer.
Here.
Steve Taglio.
Here.
Brian Johnson.
Here.
Vladimir Ivanovic.
Here.
And I, Waishali Sirke, am here as well. So everybody's here. Moving on to agenda approval. Would any board members like to provide comment on the agenda? Okay. In that case, can I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Vladimir. Can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Vladimir made the motion, seconded by Jessica. Now we shall do a roll call vote. Steve Taglio.
Yes.
Jessica Spicer.
Yes.
Brian Johnson.
Yes.
I think that was a yes. Vladimir Ivanovic.
Yes.
And I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Closed session report. There was no action taken in closed session today. Moving on to superintendent's update, Mr. Bear.
So yes, good evening, Shali. A great deal has happened in the last week plus with regard to the goings on in the state and county, and all of my comments are actually wrapped up in the first two agenda items. So I'll just defer to there.
Okay, excellent. Well, in that case, we'll move on to the next item, which is the consent calendar. Do any board members have any comments on consent items E1 through E6? No? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve consent items E1 through E6?
I move that we approve our consent items E1 through E6 as presented.
Thank you, Vladimir. Can I please have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jessica. Vladimir made the motion to approve consent items E1 through E6. Jessica seconded. And now we shall do a roll call vote. Steve.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Vladimir.
Yes.
And I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to employee requests to address the board from Los Altos Teachers Association. Kate Skirmerhorn.
Hello and good evening.
Hi.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. We'd also like to thank Jeff and Sandra for attending our rep council meeting today and talking with our site representatives. As you know, it's been a busy few weeks, and we now have our elementary students back on campus, including our sixth graders. And with more students and staff on campus, we appreciate that the district has provided that increased access to COVID tests for students and teachers. We've heard positive anecdotes from some of our teachers. Now, although they've been busy with a marathon of teaching and they are working intensely hard, they've also expressed how nice it is to see their students' faces and that students seem happy as well. Several schools noted that they appreciated seeing administrators and board members on campus recently, and they also appreciated the increased opportunities for sites to talk to district health staff. Our schools and staff members continue to navigate the health and safety regulations, including absences and the challenges posed by the upcoming rainy days. That's really it for this evening. Just wanted to say thank you again for this opportunity to address the board, and we look forward to continuing to partner in the interest of student and staff safety.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. From the California School Employees Association, Elena Shea.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
It's been a busy year. The CSEA Exec Board and Negotiating Team is meeting on Wednesday, and our chapter is meeting on Friday to discuss and vote on the tentative agreement for the 2019-2020 year and to prepare for negotiations for this school year. We look forward to working with the district representatives in February. Compensation is one area we'd like to discuss. And the CSCA Exec Board will be hearing from our members about their concerns on Friday And we've scheduled additional chapter meetings in February, March, April, and May to make sure we can represent the classified employees across all our sites who are working very hard in this exceptional year to keep our schools open and safe. And we always welcome meeting with board members. If you have concerns or questions for us, you can always ask me or ask Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. All right, we're going to move on to community comments. This time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items, except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. So we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Do we have any takers for public comment? Seeing none, I am going to move us along to agenda items H. Oh, Helene, is that for agenda item H? Okay, I'm going to assume that it is. Okay, school reopening update. Mr. Bear.
Yes, good evening. It's good to see you again. Marcy, go ahead and get the slides going. Wait just a moment. It has, as I said a moment ago, been a very busy week and a half or so with the situation changing again, even with some updates today that aren't in the slide presentation, but I'll talk through as they just came through at noontime today, and then again at 3. So next slide. Just kind of catching up with where we are. As Kate said a moment ago, we have all our elementary students back in person, including grade 6. It started last Thursday. It was great to see them back on campus, as well as the teachers. Up next, grade 7 and 8. That is a date to be determined based on new guidance that was released from the governor's office on the 14th of January. So next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Again, just a reminder of what we are focused on in ensuring that our schools are safe places for both students and staff. It is our top priority. We recognize that the best instructional model for students is when they are here in person. We use science to guide our decisions, really making sure we adhere to changes in public health experts' guidance, which, as I said a moment ago, does happen frequently and sometimes unexpectedly. And that we are committed to collaborate with our labor groups to adhere to those agreements. Next slide. So in looking ahead, we are looking to implement some additional measures just to ensure confidence and safety of all of our staff and students. We are holding a couple of info sessions with health experts, both in our community, or actually all in our community, some of whom are parents, others of whom work in the surrounding medical community. We're targeting the week of February 1st. That may slip to the week of February 8th. We are looking to hold one for elementary level and one for junior high level. So more news will follow about that soon. We are also looking into additional personal protective equipment where appropriate. We are renewing our focus on mental health of our staff and of our students, and redoubling efforts on the community expectations that we have to maintain healthy and safe schools. And then we are also pursuing pooled testing. Several of these we'll talk about in more depth. So next slide, Marcy, let's get to those. So with regard to pooled testing, this is something we're piloting with our grade 6 students. This is asymptomatic testing, much like our individual testing that takes place now weekly within the district. And as a reminder, we're partnering with El Camino Hospital for that asymptomatic testing. But this is in addition to that. So this is, again, a pilot we're going to run in 6th grade. Students will be tested weekly by student cohort. We have parent consent forms out right now. The difference with this testing is, as the title indicates, the student nasal swabs. It is a nasal swab test. They are pooled. So all the students from a single cohort will be pooled into a single vial or tube, and that'll be sealed off and sent off to the testing firm. And we get results in 36 to 48 hours after they receive it. This is allowing us to do a bit more surveillance within our cohorts and understand if there are any additional cases in those cohorts. If there is a positive, much like if there's a positive right now from a student or a staff member in a cohort, then that cohort will be quarantined. Though we won't know the exact student that is who has tested positive, we will know someone in that cohort has tested positive. So letter will be sent out to those families in that cohort, and testing, not only quarantining, but follow-up testing will be needed. So again, the benefits of this is that we're bringing this into the classroom. It's going to allow us to test a greater percentage of our students to understand the existence of COVID within the classroom. The cost of it, this is where it becomes a bit more cost effective. It costs $150 per cohort on a weekly basis. So in 6th grade, we have 28 cohorts across our district. We have about 18 weeks of testing remaining. That'll be about $75,000 for the remainder of the school year. I'll remind you that there are a number of COVID relief grants being discussed right now at both the state and the federal level. So we may see some funds to assist with this. But looking at the overall cost, it seems a pretty cost-effective way to get greater insight into those cohorts. The company is Concentric. You can see up there on the top line. They're actually out of Boston area. So we will be overnighting 28 samples every Thursday, I believe it is, out to Boston, and then we will get results over the weekend. And we'll get those via a web portal and have an indication of which class, if there is a positive, where it's from. All right, next slide. So with regard to the community commitments or the community expectations for healthy schools, we talked about really re-upping our efforts on this. As we have been engaged in this return to school at our elementary sites since September 28th, it does, there is the opportunity perhaps for things to become more routine. And what concerns us is when things do become more routine, there's the potential of relaxing, right? And becoming a bit more casual and letting our guard down. We certainly don't want that to happen. We need to make sure it doesn't. So with both our staff and our parent community, we're going to re-up these efforts. And there is an agenda item, I think it's H4 tonight, that will talk a bit more about this in greater depth. But I just want to highlight some of the areas here. just recognizing that we are in this together, right? Sounds a bit cliche, but it is very true in this situation. Our individual actions and decisions impact our entire school communities. So we need to remember that if we're choosing to, as a student, come back to school in person. We're really looking to limit the spread of COVID-19 by making health and safety a priority for all, both staff and for students. The expectation is that we're going to adhere to all policies, procedures, and orders related to COVID-19. Those are district policies, those are county policies, and those are state policies. We are constantly working to interleave those as the expectations change on any given day. Symptom checking is an important part of this for both students and staff, making sure that symptom checking is done each day through either text or email, because we are monitoring those on a daily basis and we are following up with anyone who hasn't completed that. Again, abiding by all current orders, including those regarding unnecessary travel, which is still in effect in Santa Clara County. And just a really simple one: if you don't feel well, stay home. We are being more cautious this year, and whereas oftentimes we as employees 2 or 3 years ago may just power through a runny nose or feeling a little bit off, we're not wanting people to do that this year. So we do want everyone to really abide by that, be it staff or students. Next slide. So new state guidelines. I'll clarify that these are the new state guidelines that were released on January 14th, not to be confused with the new state guidelines that were released today. So with regard to the new state guidelines that were released on the 14th, these were really school-specific guidelines. And there's another agenda item next where we're going to look for board approval on a COVID safety plan. But I just want to highlight that this is here. In the state's eyes, our elementary campuses and our SDC campuses are open, and our junior high schools are not. That was made clear in the new guidance that was released. And as I said in the second letter I sent last week, that absolutely was a change from the state's guidance the day before. So of course we are committed to adhering to that. So we sprang into action and made sure that that our plans changed to reflect that. Part of the new state guidelines are that every school needs to adopt a COVID-19 safety plan, what the state is calling a safety plan. It has two pieces, right? One is the COVID-19 school guidance checklist, a pretty straightforward form that's 3 or 4 pages. It's actually on the agenda tonight for consideration on the next agenda item, H2. Part 2 of the COVID-19 safety plan is the COVID-19 prevention program. This is really our LASD reopening plan, which is already in place and has been posted on our website since September of 2020. The guidance written from the state clearly recognizes that most districts in the state are not in person in session. So it speaks to needing to develop a reopening plan. I've checked with Santa Clara County legal counsel, and absolutely what we have in place is already have in place in the form of a reopening plan does meet the criteria for that COVID-19 prevention plan. Next slide. So I want to just remind you or bring you up to speed on the data here in the district. That should probably be, as of today, January 25th, because the data here includes cases from last week. We had 4 cases last week added to our totals, 2 at Oak and 2 at Covington, a student and a staff member at Covington, and 2 students at Oak, siblings, I believe. So that those are our counts. I've removed the totals for Block and Egan since they're not in session yet. It didn't make sense to have that there. We are continuing to do a great job mitigating and containing any positive cases. There were no quarantines as a result of these last 4 cases. So after our nursing staff did the contact tracing, those weren't necessary. So next slide. So just bringing you up to speed on the totals here. Total of 22 cases at our schools since returning to in-person learning back in September. Some are within the same family, as I said. We do have 2 other cases that are categorized under the district level, so not attached to one of the schools. So we have a total of 24 in the district since September 28th. Again, the next bullet has not changed. A total of 5 cohorts were moved to quarantine since September. We're averaging about 1.3 cases a week right now. And as I said, we had 4 cases last week. This data can be found, I will remind everyone, on the district website. On the left side in the green box, there is a link directly to this data, so you can keep an eye on it. It is updated every Sunday evening for the prior week. And I'll just reinforce that our model of maintaining strict cohorts, stable cohorts, ensuring mask wearing is happening, ensuring distancing is happening, proper ventilation, hand hygiene, these have all proven essential to mitigating the spread of COVID on our campuses. So really great to see all of our staff able to adhere to that and students able to adhere to that to really make sure we're taking care of our community. Next slide. So back up one slide then, Marcy, and I'll just share a bit about what happened today. Today at a noontime press conference, Governor Newsom pulled back on the regional stay-at-home orders that were in place. If you remember, the state was broken up into 5 different clusters, and those orders were dropped as of noontime today. So for the broader community, it means outdoor dining is again available. Indoor dining is off limits. Personal services can happen, haircuts, things like that, as long as the mitigation measures are adhered to, right? This is really driven by case numbers declining and ICU bed availability increasing. So it didn't have any direct impact on our schools. It put most counties within the state of California back into purple status. I'll remind the board that tomorrow, Tuesdays, are when the state of California updates the weekly COVID numbers. So we'll look for that to be released tomorrow. In this past week, Santa Clara County has dropped on the whole to, I think it was 33.6 per 100,000 cases on the adjusted case count. So it appears things are headed in the right direction, but I want to make sure that we're all conscious of the fact that we can't let up on the mitigation measures that we have in place. We are proving successful, and we want to make sure we stay with that. Under under the new orders, I think it's in my next slides, but I'll just repeat it here. Junior high schools can return to in-person once we hit red and on the 5th day after we hit red. So I inaccurately put out in my email last week that it was 14 days. It is actually 5 days. So once we hit red on a Tuesday, if we count 5 days, that brings us to Sunday. That means once we hit red, the following Monday, we will be able to return junior high school students to campus. So we think that's still a little ways off, though, with case count of 33 per 100,000. That's still quite a ways from 7 cases per 100,000. So with that, I'll take any questions the board has, any clarifying. This is just an information item, but would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Does the board oh, Jessica, go.
Yeah, couple questions around testing. As it relates to the pool testing, once we've done the pilot with the 6th graders, do we have any plans on bringing it down to other grade levels or up? But now
Yeah,
yeah, sorry.
I think we will look at that and evaluate that once it occurs. I think we would go up first to 7th and 8th grade,
Yeah.
before moving down. It is a self-administered swab, so as we drop lower, I think we have to pay attention to that, and there's considerations with our youngest students participating in something like that.
No, I understand. My 5th grader doesn't enjoy the experience. So when I do it, especially. I have another question related to testing, and it's the El Camino testing that we're doing on our campuses. What days of the week are they? I remember they used to be on Wednesdays. Are they on Tuesdays and Thursdays now?
So it varies. We're having to be flexible, especially as we have asked El Camino to increase to weekly testing. What we have had to have in exchange for that is greater flexibility in the days we offer it, because we now need to fit into their schedule, and they are serving quite a number of other school districts as well.
Okay, I just if they're on Tuesdays and Thursday, I do worry about the teachers who are working those days.
Yep.
They only have a certain hour that they can go to get tested. So, but I understand the logistics we're dealing with. All right, that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Any other clarifying? Oh, go ahead, Vladimir.
Jeff, going back to the pool testing, you said that you were sending in the pool samples in on a Thursday. Does that mean that the cohorts that are in on a Tuesday have to have their samples for?
Sorry, thank you. No, that's right. We're doing them on a Thursday because we have 6th graders coming in on a AM PM cadence.
Okay.
So we can get all of them tested on Thursday, both morning
Okay.
and afternoon cohorts.
Yeah. Okay, got it. That's all.
Steve, Brian?
This is more of a comment than a question. I appreciate the efforts sort of putting out the expectations to the community again and reemphasizing that. My only quibble is that I think the sheet that I've seen and what you had on the slide talked about the county sort of something about unnecessary travel or non-essential travel. And my preference would be for when we communicate that the quarantine, as I understand it, is still in effect on a county level, despite the state backing off of that. And so I would just like to see that included in all of our communication, that is not optional, it's a mandatory quarantine and it's still in effect, even though the more stringent stay-at-home order has been relaxed a little bit.
Jeff, you're on mute. Jeff, you're still muted.
Thank you. I'll remember that for agenda item H4 when it comes up. Do we talk about that?
Right. Any other questions for Jeff on his presentation? Okay. I was just wondering, Jeff, if we're doing pool testing weekly of our students, then that would ease up a few appointment spots for the El Camino testing, because then parents won't necessarily have to, at least for their sixth graders in the pilot, take them to be tested.
Yep, that's true.
Okay, that's good. Okay, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. Let me see. Oh, okay, Marcy, go ahead.
Our first speaker is Brooke Lopez.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Oh, hi, everyone. I just have a quick question. I don't know if you can answer within this format, but I'm wondering if all teachers across all grade levels will be able to utilize the testing, the weekly testing on campus that the sixth grade teachers and students are going to have access to.
I'll answer you offline, Brooke, but
Okay.
I'll email you, but maybe you could send me an email with your question. I didn't quite understand the question there.
Will the TK through fifth grade teachers have access to the weekly testing that the sixth graders will have access to?
Okay, yep, shoot me an email.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Brooke. And thank you for your question. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item? Steve.
More for a future of where we're headed with this, as we hopefully inch towards the ability to vaccinate. Are we going to be able to negotiate with the hospital to do that on our campuses like they've done the testing, or is that something we're not going to be able to pull off with them?
Now, this is a popular question. I just answered this at the rep council meeting I attended. So I have asked this question a couple of times and pressed on it. Each county has the ability to set up the process by which people are vaccinated. Santa Clara County has decided to go with utilizing the existing infrastructure, and that's using primary care providers for those who have them, and then using other avenues for those who don't. But the direction is really to utilize your primary care provider for this, right? Because I know we have El Camino come out and administer flu shots every October. And there isn't the ability isn't the right word, but that's not the path they're taking right now. And I have not yet been successful in pushing through that. Always welcome help with that.
Okay. You want us to go nag people? We're very good at that. So yeah, let us know.
Of course, having adequate vaccines is the other half of that equation, right? And just I think it's good to say this at a public meeting. The state has now moved into tier 1B. Initially, they included just a portion of that, 65-year-olds and up, right? They have also now included people working in certain industries or lines of work, education being one of them. So we do have the ability to get vaccinated, right? To be in line for that. But hospitals are also moving down that list based on how much of the vaccine they have. And I think all but Stanford right now are still limiting the vaccinations to those 75 and older and healthcare workers. Stanford has dropped into the 65 or over strand now, but they're the only ones who, just checking websites today, they're the only ones who've done that so far. So we are anxiously waiting for all of our folks to be able to be included on that actual sign-up list and not just the state list.
Thank you, Jeff. Vladimir?
A couple of, some questions, some clarifications. One of them has to do with pool testing. And I just wanted to confirm that pool testing has been, in fact, is covered by guidance from the CDC. Because we've had some questions, yeah. And
yep,
it's,
the CDC, the CDC does speak to surveillance testing and pool testing being one type of surveillance testing. Yes.
Okay, and this is being done in conjunction with the hospital, so it's not some experimental technique that they're
right. So what the company we're using for this, they have proven the efficacy at 96% of the actual tests. What they are working on now and piloting is the scalability of that, right? So they did it very locally. Now they're looking to scale it nationwide if they can, and that's where they're piloting right now, whether they have the infrastructure to make that happen, and they've been successful thus far.
Good. Just a quick comment. 2 weeks ago, Kaiser opened for a very short period of time 65 and over testing, and I snuck in. So tomorrow I get vaccinated. I think you're right. They've closed it off because of lack of vaccines. But an interesting thing is I heard that Stanford University is testing everybody that comes on campus with a 15-minute test. And that might be something interesting to look at. And the final question had to do with, you were talking about reopening middle school on the Monday after a Tuesday that we fell into to the red. It seems that that's probably opening schools on the Monday before, Monday after the change on Tuesday, runs the risk of the following Tuesday, which is one day later, that we fall back into purple. So my suggestion is you should look at, my suggestion is to look at reopening on the Wednesday following the previous week's Tuesday red. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. The one advantage to opening on that Monday is that if we do open on that Monday, we would be considered open.
We can stay open.
And we can stay open.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, all right. I'm not sure that. Okay. All right, thanks.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to just a follow-up to the junior high reopening question, because in our previous discussion, we had talked about a major reorganization of the junior high bell schedule, which I thought was necessary to do the hybrid reopen. And since I happen to know, having an 8th grader, we haven't done that major reorganization of the bell schedule, is there a plan to make that change sometime between now and then? It seems like we would need, if we waited until red to do that reorganization, it seems like it might take a little while to get that through, or will we just do it when we get the green light?
Sandra, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so the new schedule is actually completely built and teed up. So it's essentially a matter of it's obviously more complicated, but flipping the switch for this. So we would want to do it during that time period. And by Friday, kids would have their new schedule. Teachers would have their new schedule, so we could open on Monday. But it is all built because we were ready to do it before the 21st.
So would then there be like teacher and class assignment shifts in that period, or?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Any other comments on this agenda item? All right. I don't have any comments either, but I do want to thank Jeff and staff for being so nimble, because last week it felt like I personally felt like I was getting whiplash. So, and I want to thank our parents for being so nimble and flexible as well. These things change on a dime. So moving, excuse me, to our next agenda item, the COVID-19 safety plan. The Board of Trustees will consider approving the Los Altos School District COVID-19 safety plan. Mr. Bear. You're still on mute.
This is a really bad day for me. Thank you for muting or unmuting. Yes, so this is a short slide deck, and I alluded to it in the last presentation. But the state has updated their reopening guidance. They did this on the 14th of January. Next slide. So they're calling this a comprehensive framework, and what it really did was bring together a number of sets of guidelines and orders that were in existence from both public health and the Department of Education, all the way back to July 17th to January 14th. There were a number of different procedures, orders, expectations issued during that time. This reissuance of the reopening guidelines really meant to consolidate those various plans that were out there. So it pulled together the reopening requirements from the Blueprint for a Safer Economy that's still in existence, the whole process for reporting COVID cases, contact tracing, etc., putting some greater definition around physical distancing and stable cohorting. And then just a whole section on considerations in planning for reopening to in person. Next slide. So at the heart of this is a district adopting a COVID-19 safety plan. As I said earlier, it is a requirement of this new guidance. There are two components to it. As I said, one is the COVID-19 school guidance checklist, which is attached to the agenda. And the second is the COVID-19 prevention program, which is really our reopening plan. That also is attached, and it is also posted on the LASD website. So it has been up there and been updated periodically as guidance has changed since September 28th of 2020. So the recommendation here is that the board approve the attached COVID-19 school guidance checklist. And by doing so, since we already have credit in the state's eyes for having the reopening plan posted and acting as the COVID-19 prevention program, by approving the guidance checklist, the board will be approving the safety plan for the district. Next slide. So also in this new guidance came a new job for Sandra. Each Monday, we are required to report as a district what our status is. We need to report whether we're in-person full-time, in-person part-time, hybrid. Just having in-person cohorts only, that would be our LASD plus program, or distance learning only. This, again, reporting is required every Monday starting today. We did submit that. Sandra, did submit that today, and we'll continue doing that every Monday until the guidance has changed.
Every other Monday, I'm just correcting you.
Oh, thank you. Every other Monday. All right, next slide. So what are the impacts on us, right, as a district? Our elementary sites are considered to be open by the state. We can continue with our current program as we are doing right now. That is classroom instruction and LASD plus. In addition to that, there's actually small cohorting as well and individual testing that students can come in for. Our junior high school sites are not considered open by the state. The exception to this are our SDC classes and our LASD plus cohorts. They can continue as currently implemented, right? The state has said we do not need to go backwards, but we can keep those classes open, and we can actually expand on LASD plus courses in the interim, which is what we are looking to do. Grade 7 and 8 will remain in distance learning until we are able to reopen. And you can see there again, 5 days after the county is in red is when we have our first opportunity. And once again, our reopening plan is posted on the district website. That was another requirement. Is there another slide, Marcy? Yes, what we need from the board is approval of the COVID-19 safety plan, an action to do so. And as a reminder, it's both parts, right? The guidance checklist and the safety plan that are attached is what you're approving. Even though you've already approved the reopening plan, but the state is asking that occur again.
Thank you, Jeff. Board members, do any of you have any clarifying questions on Jeff's presentation? Okay, I just had one. Oh, the checklist that we're approving tonight, I saw on it where it has to be submitted. Do we have to wait for it to be approved, or is there no approval? Like we submit it and we're done?
By approving, when you approve it tonight?
No, I'm talking about whoever we send it to. So
sorry, ask the question again.
So the agency that we send it to, which I believe is the state, do we need for them to approve it, the checklist? It didn't seem,
no,
didn't seem like
so
it.
the way it works is if we don't hear from them in 7 days, it's considered approved.
Okay.
If we do hear from them, it will be about needing to make some sort of adjustment, which I don't anticipate.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Randy, do you want to just speak briefly to the linkage here in the February 1st potential deadline with the governor's plan that may or may not take place?
Yeah, I think the fact that it may or may not take place is probably the most important thing. It's his proposal, and we're supposed to have this plan approved by the board prior to February 1st if we want to be first in line for the $450 per pupil allocation that's under his proposal.
That again may or may not occur.
Which may or may not occur. And if we wait till later, then the amount of funding diminishes from the $450 per person, per child.
Thanks.
Thanks, Randy. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. And right now I don't see any hands up for public comment. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. So can I please have a motion to approve the Los Altos School District COVID-19 safety plan? Vladimir, you're muted. I'm assuming you want to.
I know. Yes. I'd like to move that we approve the COVID-19 school reopening plan as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Can I just ask for correction on language there, that we're moving to approve the LASD COVID-19 safety plan as presented.
I'd like to correct that we're approving the COVID-19 safety plan as presented.
Thank you, Vladimir. Jessica, you seconded, just confirm
Yes,
it?
I second.
Thank you. Any further board discussion? Okay, thank you. So Vladimir made the motion to approve Los Altos School District COVID-19 safety plan. Jessica seconded it. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Alrighty, moving on to our next agenda item, collective bargaining agreement with Los Altos Teachers Association. The Board of Trustees will consider approving the 2020-21 negotiated agreement with the district's certificated staff, LATA. Mr. Kenyon.
Yeah, I'll start this. We sunshined at the last board meeting the terms of the tentative agreement with the Los Altos Teachers Association, the financial implications of the terms. And that is legally required before the board can take action. He has to do it at least 10 days prior, and we've met that requirement. You will see that both Jeff and I certified to the effect that we would be able to meet the financial obligations for current year and 2 future years as a result of that agreement. You also note that we have a letter from the county office indicating that they've reviewed our disclosure and they agree with our certification. The essential terms of the agreement that we're talking about tonight is a 2% salary increase for LATA employees for the current year and for the next year, and the third year of this proposed 3-year agreement, that salaries would be a reopener for future discussion. So tonight you have the ability to take action to approve the agreement, the tentative agreement, and that's what we're asking and recommending for you to do tonight. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Shali. And you're mute.
Dang it. Okay. Thanks, Randy. Do any board members have any questions for Randy? No. Okay, great. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. And I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to close public comment. Board members, do you want to provide any comments? Nope. Okay. Then can I please have a motion to approve the LATA collective bargaining agreement?
I'd like to move that we approve the LATA collective bargaining agreement as presented.
Thank you, Vladimir. Can I please have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any further board discussion? Okay, seeing none. Vladimir made the motion to approve the LATA collective bargaining agreement as presented. Jessica seconded. I will now do a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Jessica?
Emphatic yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
I too vote yes, and I'm very happy to announce that the motion passes unanimously. And I know that we're all really glad that we can give our teachers the raises. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Community expectations to in-person reopening of schools. Staff will review the community expectations in place to ensure a safe return to in-person learning. These community expectations are required of families and staff to provide health and safety protection for our school communities. The Board of Trustees will have the opportunity for comments and providing additional direction to staff. Mr. Bear.
Yes, thank you again. So attached, you can find the community expectations, community commitments that were sent to both families and staff back in September. as a set of agreements for their children to return to in-person learning. The board had expressed an interest in reviewing these and perhaps providing some comment or polish on these as we look forward to re-engaging our whole community around this. I'm going to suggest, just because wordsmithing an entire document is always a challenge, that with Jessica being the trustee running point on communications, that we take board input and commentary on this, and then we'll take it away and work on this on the side, and then bring it back to the board to review. I think better than trying to parse out each word here tonight on the fly. And then I know Sarah Stern-Benoit is listening as well, and so we'll all be taking notes on this. But again, the idea behind this is, as our staff and our parents read this, they understand what is expected in order to participate in in-person learning during the pandemic. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Shali.
Thank you, Jeff. Any clarifying questions for Jeff on this agenda item? I just have one. Is there a difference between unnecessary and non-essential when we're talking about travel? Is one phrase better than the other?
I don't think one is better than the other, but I think looking at the language that is currently in the county health order would be the right one to go with. We can make a note of tracing that back and making sure we're using symmetrical language.
Great. Thank you. So we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. I see no takers for public comment, so I'm going to close public comment. Board discussion, does anyone want to comment? Jessica?
Yeah, I have some ideas of how I think we can improve the document. I think it actually has great bones. I just want to make it strengthen it. And so my ideas would be, and this is in order to make sure our campuses are ensured to be more COVID safe. It's never going to be 100%, but it will get us towards the best percentages we can be at. So what I would be changing is, as it relates to the bullets, really make sure it's active voice versus passive voice. And in some cases where some of the bullets are longer, make it sub bullets for ease of understanding and following these commitments. And I want to make sure that there's actually a commitment to wear masks off campus when in settings that you're not within with people from your household. And then a commitment to not come on campus after non-essential or unnecessary travel, whatever that case may be, whatever the wordsmithing should be for that based on the orders. And also not to come on campus after if you've been to a large gathering without distancing or masks. So those are some of the big things that I would suggest. Also that we change the document's name to Community Commitment to Healthy Schools. I feel like that's stronger language. So those are my suggestions so far. And I'd made a markup to that extent on my own, but I'd really love to hear what everybody else has to say on, so we can make this a strong document.
Thank you, Jessica. Brian, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So I think I agree with all of those, Jessica. I think I renew my earlier comment. I'd like to see the word quarantine in here explicitly. just so that it's on people's radar. And the other thing I'd like to see somehow, and I leave it to you as to how to phrase it, is an expectation that that this isn't just an expectation that kids will be kept home under these circumstances, but if district or school staff determines that one of these circumstances applies, it'll be. If you find that, you know, if a child lets slip that they've been on a trip and they got back yesterday from Hawaii or Tahoe or wherever else, let me know if you can't hear me. My internet connection is flaking out, of course. But just that if we find out that a child should be quarantining, they will be sent home to quarantine. We're not just going to sort of shrug our shoulders at this point.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Vladimir.
I had the comments of Brian and Jessica covered exactly what I was going to talk about, which is the quarantining after voyages or trips or something like that. That's all.
Steve, anything?
Yeah, I did shoot some notes over to Jessica earlier, so she's got those. I agree with everything everybody said. I think what this tries to do is encompass the last 3 board meetings we've been nagging people, you have to behave differently. And that we're just documenting very clearly what our expectations are about what different behavior looks like. And so I'm glad we've got this pulled together and can get it out there. So I'll take another pass at it and shoot you some comments, Jessica, since you're going to be doing the editing for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I don't have any further comments other than to agree with what everyone else has said. I didn't find that the document was strong enough, you know, and so I think we really need to be very firm on this. So I will take another pass at it, and Jessica, email you my comments as well. And, okay.
I have one quick addition. Sorry. There's a bullet that says notify your school office immediately if you've tested positive or been exposed to someone who has tested positive. There is an app that the state of California uses, CA Notify, I think, that will let you know if you've been exposed to somebody who has tested positive. Even though you may not know that you've been exposed, that app will let you know that you have been exposed.
Thank you.
Just one more question. I'm assuming that this community commitment, and I like that word swap better, Jessica, thank you, that this community commitment does not just apply to the current school year, but it should apply to the coming school year, the 21-22 school year, because I really don't think we're going to be fully out of this thing yet. I don't think we can fully let our guard down. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or at least the first?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that it's a living document. When regulations change, this document's going to change.
That's good. Thank you. That's very reassuring. Okay. Any other comments on this agenda item? Okay. We're going to move on to.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to offer one more comment because I felt like we got very negative there for a minute. And I think I do want to sort of acknowledge that, you know, most of our families, I think, are abiding by this. Most are bought in, most are doing what it takes, which I think is reflected in our pretty low COVID case rates, despite what we're seeing in the community and in some of the school districts. So thank you to everybody out there who I know is making real sacrifices to abide by these guidelines.
That is a very fair point. Thank you, Brian. Okay, now we shall move on to H5, the 2021-22 state budget. Mr. Kenyon will provide an overview of the governor's proposals for the 2021-22 state budget and their impact on our district. Randy.
Thank you, Shelley. And just want to remind everyone that what we're talking about tonight, first, it's a discussion item, not an action item. And these are proposals. These are not actions yet. Whatever the governor proposes needs to go through the whole legislative process, ultimately ending in a state budget in June. So keep that in mind as we go through the proposals. So next slide, please, Marcy. And what I'm sharing with you is what I've gleaned from some webinars and written material about what the governor proposed probably 2 weeks and a little bit more ago. In terms of very generally, the state economy is in pretty good shape right now, at least compared to what we were thinking back in May and in June, when the governor put out his May revised proposals, and then when our state budget was adopted in June. We actually see increased proposed spending for next year as the finances of the state have improved. And the improvement has largely been due to personal income tax revenues being significantly higher than thought almost a year earlier. And I've noted that the personal income tax revenues are just a little over 70% of total state revenue. So they have a big impact. So when the capital gains are coming in, that's going to increase personal income tax. So you're seeing that in what's happening in the stock market these days. Next slide. So his proposals reflect his priorities, and so very generally sort of indicated what his priorities seem to be. Certainly dealing with the COVID pandemic and trying to help the state recover from the impacts. He still is interested in rebuilding the state reserves, partially depleted because of the pandemic. Strongly interested in getting students back in school for in-person instruction. We see that in a lot of different proposals that he's made. He's also very concerned about inequity and those students who have fallen further behind, perhaps because of distance learning or whatever, the lack of in-person instruction or changes in the way instruction is being delivered. So he's got some proposals that would target interventions and some funding available to school districts to help with students who are suffering more than others. And he continues to propose more money for schools. It's been a theme throughout his relatively short tenure. So next slide, Marcy. In terms of direct impact on our district, financially, there's not a lot to share. There's some more slides that talk about proposals that could impact us. But in terms of significant budget impacts that directly affect our general fund finances on an ongoing basis, well, while we do not get any of the LCF funding directly, it's a calculation that our property taxes exceed the calculated guarantee. It's important to note that he is increasing the funding for the base guarantee to school districts by $2 billion. The schools did not get a COLA in the current year, but he is putting a compounded COLA out next year, which reflects the current year cost of living increase of 2.31% and the expected cost of living adjustment for next year of 1.5 compounds to 3.84%. Even though we get $0, that increases our state guarantee of funding, and certainly for all LCFF districts, that is money in their pockets. The one area where we do get direct state funding is special ed. Unfortunately, special ed will get a COLA, but it's not the compounded one. It's just the estimated 1.5% cost of living increase for next year. He does have some money in proposed funding for some additional preschool programs. So next slide, talk a little bit more about some other aspects, some of the one-time funding proposals. So he continues to push for early childhood education. So he is proposing to incentivize transitional kindergarten for all 4-year-olds, right? We don't have any details yet on this, how that might roll out. That would be a significant change and it would be costly. And so his proposal includes money not only for program, but also for facilities. He has proposed some additional funding for mental health programs and specifically school climate surveys to address mental health issues that might be related to COVID. He has some proposed grants for professional development for teachers and other educators, or wannabe teachers. So that's, again, repeats his theme of wanting to expand opportunities for education and to increase the workforce in an area where it's not always easy to find teachers. Next slide. A bit about the learning loss proposal. Here is a one-time funding that's quite significant in total dollars, 4.6 billion. He's proposing to target interventions for what are unduplicated pupils, the low-income English learners and foster and homeless youth. And while there's a lot of detail not yet released, there is a potential funding calculation being done, and our potential is $2.4 million in funding under this proposal. Again, we don't know exactly what the requirements might be, but that's a significant chunk of money for us to address learning loss and any other mitigations that any other interventions that we might want to make for these type students. So more about that when we learn more and whether or not it becomes a reality. Next slide. It's important to remember some of the things that aren't included in the proposal as key issues for us. All districts throughout the state are interested in liability coverage under COVID-19, so that if we have people coming to work, someone gets infected with the virus, you know, are we going to be sued, right? So what kind of liability coverage is there? The advice from attorneys have been uniform throughout the months and months of COVID. That is, if you follow all the guidance and health and safety protocols, you're in the best shape you can possibly be, but there is no specific statewide liability coverage for districts anywhere in his proposals. He doesn't propose, as unlike prior years, any reductions in the employer contributions towards the two retirement plans, the state teachers retirement system and public employees retirement system retirement plans. There's no discretionary funding, right? In a couple of years, in recent years, we've had some one-time discretionary funds. All the proposals that he has made this year have restrictions in place. None of them are discretionary. Next slide, please. So the federal government's already passed a stimulus package, $900 billion. And you note here that $82 billion of that's earmarked for schools, approximately $10 billion of that for California. We have a preliminary estimate of $315,000 that would come to us under this package. So as I recall, it's pretty wide open and has a lot of flexibility as to what those monies could be used for. Jeff alluded to in the slides regarding reopening, the need for additional funds for some of the COVID testing. Here's one of the possible revenue sources we could use to pay for that. Next slide. So you took action tonight to approve the COVID-19 safety plan. That's part of the requirement under his proposal, what's called Safe Schools for All, where he's incentivizing districts to get students back for in-person learning. I mentioned this earlier, there's a base grant of $450 per student if we reopen, or in our case, if we are already open, because districts who are already open also qualify for the funding. So if we are open as early as February, we get the $450 per student. And it gets reduced if the reopening is delayed until March. That's just the base funding. There's additional dollars based on our share of the LCFF formula. Okay. So I don't know if it's on the next slide. I'm just gonna say now, it looks like our share out of this, well, let's go to the next slide and I'll comment about that. This is sort of a checklist. Jeff alluded to the requirements when talking about the reopening and the safety plan. So I've kind of put a check mark here on the areas that we have addressed. So tonight you've addressed the approval in which the board has to take action to approve the safety plan. You've done that. It can, and I have to look at my list here on the side. It conforms with the state public health guidance, and it incorporates the Cal OSHA emergency standards as part of that prevention, and that's part of the prevention, the prevention plan that we talked about earlier. We have to have a memorandum of understanding, some kind of agreement with our employee groups, which we have, which we accomplished earlier in the summer and in the fall with both employee groups. We are offering in-person instruction, so we're meeting that requirement. We do have, we can certify to technology that we've provided access to the technology that students need and that they have high-speed internet connections to participate in online learning as part of the program. And we are working on the COVID-19 testing requirements. And I think what the discussion that Jeff led earlier about the concentric pooled testing for the junior high student, or for the 6th grade students, begins to address that, where all students and staff need to be tested on a regular basis for COVID. So we're meeting all and most all of these requirements already, and honing in on the last one. Next slide. I think I want to go back 2 slides, Marcy, because I skipped the slide right there. Yeah, so I glossed over this. So this funding for the Safe Schools for All, our total out of this funding could be as high as $2.4 million. I just got an alert from our consultants in Sacramento School Services. They do a calculation for all the districts in the state based on the information they have about this proposal. So there's a significant amount of money there for us. Now we can go to the last slide, Marcy. So before I go into, well, I'll do next steps and then a couple final comments. So these are proposals again, so nothing is concrete yet, but we will begin to base our preliminary budget and future budgets on the governor's proposals. So at the next board meeting, I will bring you a preliminary budget for next year, as I do every year, based on these proposals and what other information we have on hand. For example, property tax growth estimates and things like that, staffing needs, et cetera. You will get a second interim financial report on the current year on March 8th. That'll be another major financial update. We will hear from the governor as he revises his proposals in May. And then in June, we adopt our budget and the LCAP. And typically the adopted budget is based on the May revised proposals that we hear from, that we get from the governor. Just 2 other comments. One is, I mentioned at the first interim report that our funding for LAF may be dropping next year. You know, there is concern about fundraising for LAF or for PTAs during this COVID pandemic, right? So it's a concern. We don't know yet what the final outcome will be. The foundation is beginning to talk about the grant next year being as low as $2.5 million. I've already incorporated, we'll be incorporating that in the preliminary budget for next year. And we probably will begin talking with you on February 8th about, you know, what's the impact of that on our finances and how do we want to, you know, do we want to have any discussion about how to address that? The other comment I wanted to make is just last week, newly elected President Biden released his proposal for a COVID relief package of $1.9 trillion. $170 billion of that would be for, $170 billion of that would be for schools. We don't know how that would filter down to us or how it filters down to California. It is his proposal. That too has to go through a legislative process. But one of the key parts is it's very flexible in terms of what the money can be used for, right? It could be used for equipment, it could be used for instruction, it could be used for staffing, it could be used for any number of things, intervention. So as we wrestle with, what have our costs been this year dealing with COVID, as we deal with learning loss issues and perhaps mental health issues as we go forward and into whatever the program looks like next year, it looks like we will have some additional funding sources beyond what we've already received, both in the governor's proposed packages and in the president's proposed package. So that's pretty much my comments. Quick summary of the governor's proposals. And again, we will bring to you some of the financial implications as part of the preliminary budget, and what that looks like at the next meeting. So Shali, I'll turn it back to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Randy. Does anyone have any questions for Randy? Any clarifying questions? Jessica?
Just more of it's a clarifying question / comment as it relates to the COVID testing on your check box, that slide that had the check marks on it. Not just concentric, we have the El Camino testing that's once a week.
Right. Yeah, there's specific cadences on how frequently we need to test. So I think for staff, we're already meeting that requirement, but I don't think we are for students yet.
So, and Randy, I'd just point out just the difference between testing and making testing available, right? Because we can't require testing from
Correct.
either students or staff.
Any other questions before we go to public comment? All right, I'd now like to open up for public comment. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. And I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Would any board members like to provide comment on this agenda item? Vladimir.
I attended, like some of you did, the Capital Advisors seminar on the governor's budget proposals. And one of the things they commented there is that the items that are being proposed can be implemented or can become law right away, can become law before June 15th, or can wait until the June 15th budget to come through. So there are a couple of different places where we might get laws to change, that's all. It's just a heads up.
Great. Thank you, Vladimir. Any other comments? Okay. I don't have any other comments to make on this agenda item either. So I want to thank Randy for that. Thank you very much. And Randy, you're going to be up again on our next agenda item, Transfer of Development Rights Purchase and Sale Agreement, the Sobrato Organization. The Board of Trustees will consider approving the agreement for the transfer of 80,000 square feet of development rights to Sobrato for a total purchase price of $10,400,000. Mr. Kenyon.
Yes, as you know, as part of our agreement with the city of Mountain View to help effectuate the purchase of the 10th site at the corner of Showers in California, they created a transfer of development rights program as a way of helping us. And that involves transferring unused development rights on the property when we are essentially a low density developer compared to many commercial outfits that would probably put high-rise buildings on that property because it's zoned for higher density. So unused square footage that we would not be developing could be sold and transferred to developers in other areas of this for projects throughout the city. Sobrato is our first developer that we have an agreement with. We have letters of intent with, I think, maybe 7 different projects, 6 developers, 7 projects that total 610,000 square feet of development rights that we were selling at $130 a square foot. Sobrato has got their project, which is in the East Westman Precise Plan area, approved by the city. We are negotiating the actual agreements with each of the developers. The transfer of development rights requires an agreement for that exchange of property, if you will, property square footage in dollars in exchange, that transaction. Sobrato is the first to come to us with a finalized agreement. It's here for you tonight. As you noted, it's a certain number of, 80,000 square feet. I don't have it in front of me. I think 80,000 square feet at 10, which would bring in $10.4 million to us. And we're recommending certainly that you approve the agreement tonight. I've also included the key deal terms. And I'll remind you that each developer, as we've been negotiating these transfer of development rights agreements, each developer has different, I'll call them hot button deal terms that we have to negotiate. Some are concerned about the down payment. What's the down payment? Some are concerned about the period of time within which they have to close the deal. Those are 2 of the common areas where we have disagreements among the developers. So ideally, we would have liked to have one standard agreement that worked for all. Not happening. So you'll get them individually, developer by developer, as we have successfully negotiated those agreements. Again, I'm asking you to approve the agreement with Sobrato for tonight and applaud them for coming to agreement and to bringing it forward to you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that I might be able to answer. And you're muted again, Shelley.
Sorry. And I had my cursor over the microphone too, just ready to, anyway. Does anyone have any questions for Randy before we go to public comment? Okay. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. So would any board members like to provide comment on this agenda item? Okay.
I just
Jessica,
wanted
go
to,
ahead.
I just want to say I'm glad we've gotten to this point, that we have one of these in front of us. It's been a long time coming. It will be nice when all the conditions are met and we get our $10.4 million in the bank. So thank you, Randy, and our attorneys and staff for all the hard work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that there is a process that each developer has to go through to get to the end point where we can comfortably close on these agreements. So they have a number of hoops to go through. So it just doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you, Randy. This is definitely a very exciting that we're closing on this. Any other comments? Vladimir.
Yeah, so I had actually had to step away because there was a bird in my house and I had to let the bird out. So I don't know if I'm repeating comments that Jessica might have made. But I'd really like to thank Sobrato for their work here, because they are known for their attention to the community. And that's really, really appreciated. And I also like to thank the city of Mountain View, who's basically allowed this entire process to happen. And without it, we would not have been able to purchase a tent site at all. And then of course, Randy and our consultants have spent hours and hours and hours and hours on this. And to make it happen must be very exciting. So thank you all.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Well, I echo Jessica and Vladimir's sentiments for sure. So can I please have a motion to approve the transfer of development rights purchase and sale agreement with the Sobrato organization as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. Can I please have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Is there any further board discussion? Seeing none, Vladimir made the motion to approve the transfer of development rights purchase and sale agreement with the Sobrato organization as presented. Jessica seconded. We will do a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
I too vote yes. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. All right. So on to board and administration comments. This time is for the board and administration to report on non-agenda items such as committee reports, school activities, legislation, and future agendas. Who would like to start? Jeff?
Sure. I just wanted to, I meant to mention this during the consent calendar item. Just clarifying the seniority list that the board approved. That is, I think all of our trustees know this, but just clarification for the public. That's an annual exercise we go through. It's just good personnel practice to each year approve the seniority list for our LATA. So the LATA's Teacher Association. So that's why that was on the agenda, just in case there were any questions.
Thank you. Sandra?
Two things that I wanted to share. One, our terrific EL team who works out at our school sites, working with students who are learning to speak English, both remotely and in person. They are gearing up for our summative LPAC, English Language Proficiency Test. They're doing their training next week, and soon after that, we will begin assessing students. We're required to assess our current EL students each year. And I just want to give them a big shout out because they are working through what this assessment looks like in a pandemic. We're doing some of it in person, following all the protocols, and some of it virtually. So it is a big challenge, and they are working hard to get it done because we have a couple hundred students that we have to assess between now and the end of the school year. So a shout out to them. And then I also wanted to let you know of an exciting new project that began today. Mr. Drummond in the CNI office held his first training of 4 trainings coming up. We are partnering with Mentor Tutor Connection and hope to partner with others to develop a program that we're calling the Reading Fellows. And it's out of Teachers College at Columbia University, who creates our ELA, our English Language Arts curriculum. And this is a new intervention program for community members, non-educators, volunteers who commit to some serious and robust training in the teaching of reading intervention, and then will commit to a minimum of 6 weeks to work with one child 4 to 5 days a week for 30 minutes. So Greg himself has been working with one of our great 2nd grade students and meets with him every afternoon. So he himself could work through the program and develop this training. So we are really excited. We had 7 community members through Mentor Tutor Connection start their training with us today, and we hope to get them working with students very soon. And then we hope to scale this by next year to have many more volunteers working with students. So it's really exciting, and it's Greg's passion project right now, which is terrific.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
All righty. Board members. Steve? Jessica?
Yeah, so I had the PTA president's meeting, which I ended up giving the reins to Brian, but I went to one last meeting where I also put in a plug to have our PTA leaders advocate with our state legislators, the county, whoever will listen, about making sure our teachers and staff get the priority they need for vaccination. I really think they should change how the county is doing it. So I think I'm going to start emphasizing that we press the county on how this is going. I personally sent a message to Smittyman's office today after I saw that teachers were definitely within who can get vaccines now, that perhaps the county should move into making an order, because they made an order as it related to getting all these different hospitals to test more. I feel like it's time that they made orders as it relates to these vaccinations. I know supply is an issue, but it's getting out of control, especially as it relates to what happened in Los Gatos. And what else do I have going on? I welcomed the 6th grader at Covington last week. I did the Covington PTA meeting. I went to the CSBA reopening webinar today. And this weekend, I went to the Commission of Status of Women COVID wellness event, where I learned about how laughter yoga, which, and Shelly is practicing it right now.
I'm gonna go on mute.
But it really, it was helpful. I laughed because it was funny, but at the same time, I felt better after the event. So really, it was all about making yourself laugh, just spontaneously laugh over nothing, actually makes you feel better. So I think that was helpful and useful, and not only for me, but for everyone else. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Brian?
I went to Santa Rita last week to welcome the 6th graders. The teachers excited to be there as well. I think everybody was happy to be back on campus. Definitely felt a lot busier than it did the first day I went, right after break. So I think kids and families are settling back in. And then next week, I've got a couple of CSBA meetings and the LAMV PTA council.
Thank you, Brian. Vladimir?
Yeah, I also went to the 6th grade reopening, this time at Oak. And the thing I noticed was that there was no drama, no fuss. Everybody knew where they were going. And it just happened totally normally. And I even noticed one child skipping the class. So I thought that was really great. And then also I'd like to give a shout out to Brooke Lopez as the only person brave enough to make a public comment this entire session.
Steve?
Yeah, I thought of something after sitting and listening to you all talk. The Los Altos Complete Streets Commission is starting to relook at the Safe Routes to School and putting the bike plan thing together. It requires input from the schools. So Brian, if you're sitting in on those meetings, getting the attention of PTAs and let them know that's going to be coming up would be a good thing, because they're trying to figure out a way to, normally they would stand out in front of schools and take comments from people. They can't do that now, obviously. So they're looking to engage with our PTAs to get commentary in, and with obviously our staff. So just want to let you guys know that's coming. They've got a calendar put in place. Thus far, what they had was a list of projects. What they didn't have was an overarching vision, which is what seemed to be lacking. So they're hoping to get that figured out as well while they're going through this process of getting public input. So if anybody has comments about routes to school, the Complete Streets Commission is looking for them.
But just kind of sort of connected to that, Steve, I'll just interject that we did this week, end of last week, receive communication from the city of Los Altos that they want to get on our calendar. So that'll be coming up as well.
Excellent. All righty. So I too went to the, oh, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead,
No.
Tyler. I was just on the same vein as Steve of public meetings coming up. And because affordable housing is often a topic for us and our teachers, There are a couple of presentations coming up about the affordable housing the county is building on what was the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District headquarters on Distal Drive. So if people are interested in attending those, I don't have the link offhand, but drop me a line and I'll send you the info.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That's really important. Yeah, so like Vladimir, I went to the Capital Advisors Budget Perspectives Workshop last week.
Randy wants to say.
Randy wants to say something. Did I skip Randy? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Well,
Go ahead, Randy.
You could finish, Shelley, but
No,
since
go
you've
ahead.
interrupted yourself. Yeah, I just want to let you know that we have a CACF meeting this Wednesday night, and they will be coming to you at the next board meeting with a mid-year report of their findings and recommendations. So be aware of that. And secondly, a huge shout out to Jessica and Steve for continuing to provide help for delivering lunches to our free and reduced students.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I visited Almond last Thursday. That was really a highlight of my last 2 weeks. Had a wonderful conversation with Mrs. Mataroli, the principal, and it was great to see my daughter's second grade teacher, Mrs. Riley. It was wonderful to be back on campus, and it was wonderful to see that the kids knew exactly what to do. And Mrs. Mataroli told me it's because the teachers spent a lot of time going through the new protocols and stuff. And you see kids there, it was amazing. They just knew what to do. They knew how to socially distance. They all had their masks on. It was really great. Attended various CHAC meetings, them on various committees at CHAC. And there is a challenge team meeting coming up. It's the second Thursday in February, and the topic will be homelessness. Should be interesting. Tom Myers from CSA is speaking, and someone from the county is speaking. Because again, the whole housing thing, getting back to what Brian was talking about. And that's it for me. There's nothing else. I would like to adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Shelley.
Good
Thank
night.
you, everybody, for attending.
Thanks.